Thank you for joining the Once Changing the World, which is India's first Future Tech Meets Sustainability podcast. And today, I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Sundar Raman, who's the Director of Technology at the Museum of Future, which is an exhibition space for innovative and futuristic ideologies, services, and products located in the financial district of Dubai. It's founded by the Dubai Future Foundation. The goal of the museum is to promote technological development and innovation. So, Sundar, really appreciate and truly honored to have you on the podcast. And why don't we start with a small, brief introduction and background?
Sure. Thanks so much, Eddie. This is super fun to do, and thanks for reaching out. My role is as a director of technology for the Museum of the Future. And my background comes from all over the place. I was brought to Dubai, where I got this job, in order to set up all of the technical systems, which kind of span essentially the exhibition spaces, the technology that integrates into that. And in a way, exhibition spaces like this in museums start encroaching into this world that we call smart buildings. Essentially, everything is an IP-enabled system today, so we kind of have to think about these as cohesive, holistic systems. So in a way, like what I bring to this is some amount of background in exhibition design, in creative technology, and also in technology integration between these different domains.
Lovely. How cool is this? Now, you're the one who's responsible for, you mentioned, all the tech system, the exhibition space, the tech integration, and the smart building, which is like almost like making the place actually come alive. But what was the inception of this? What was the idea of the Museum of the Future, and what's its vision?
The museum started as a vision from the Dubai leadership on some level, and with subsequently an organization called the Dubai Future Foundation, so which had a set of different, I will say, almost subsidiaries or like these different projects. The strategy was to take all these different projects with a culmination over everything from future strategy to distribution about, thinking about the future, incubation of companies that were future thinking, ultimately with this thing that is the Museum of the Future as a physical embodiment of some of these ideas. So the Dubai Future Foundation had this vision, brought this together, obviously under the aegis or under the vision of Sheikh Mohammed, the current ruler of Dubai. So the space itself came about as a result of these different visions for stretched for quite a while. And what we see today is really the result of a lot of different forms of thinking, or a lot of different spaces where the Dubai Future Foundation thought through what the implementation of a Museum of the Future would look like.
Now, as a director of technology, what's the kind of research and work went into imagining and building the Museum of the Future?
So the Museum of the Future takes you to Dubai in 2071. So whichever year you're coming into the museum, let's say today, in January of 2023, you enter into the museum. But what you're entering into is really a portal, a gateway to take you to Dubai in 2071. And we tell you a story that spans across 3 different topics of interest. We take you to OSS Hope, which is Dubai's space station, in 2071. And the objective there is to collect energy using solar collectors that are distributed around the moon. And that energy is beamed back to Earth using microwave technologies to provide the capacity for free energy, or like very, very low cost energy on Earth. Now, some of these narratives are based on technologies that people have been working on or envisioning for deployment for quite some time. So we take space as one of the topics. The next is ecology. The next is health. These are 3 very key areas that the UAE has been focused on, but also these are areas that generally people are interested in terms of how they deal with these timelines, like a 50-year timeline or a 100-year timeline. So when we look back to every 50-year increment, you can see that these three elements do have a consistency of focus. 50 years ago, we started increasing how much we're paying, how much attention we're paying to health, how much the ecology has had to have our attention. And we also started doing much more about space exploration. Our next 50 years are going to have more of this focus. Obviously, we can go, okay, there are a lot of other areas, artificial intelligence, machine learning, pick one, bioengineering. We can go down any of those paths, but we have to kind of go, okay, where is it that we're going to focus? And what is the story that we're going to tell for now?
You build these, three focus areas, and you built around ecology, health, and space station. And a common man gets to experience what the next 50 years is going to look like. So you give them a glimpse and a narrative, which possibly everybody joins in as a collective and maybe somehow works toward it, or at least sees the possibilities of what a bright future could look like. Through these experiences that you have built, what are the experience that you're most proud of?
It's sort of like asking a parent, it's a bad question for me. It's like, I can't be proud of any of it because the whole thing is a story. There's one story in my mind. It's not like, oh, this little component has like more value than this other little component, because they all kind of fit together into one narrative. I think I'm most proud of the fact that, as complex as it is to tell a story of such breadth, to go from space to health, which you don't really connect these two things together in a normal conversation or even a normal trajectory of the future, it holds together in our space. So it's a kind of bold vision. And the fact that somebody even allowed this to happen is slightly crazy. It's a very audacious approach and audacious allowance to kind of let a team build something like this. I would say, actually, maybe to contradict myself, the thing that I am most proud of, and the thing that I'm most impressed by, is the fact that the general public has embraced this. People come in every day. This is by no means a given. Like, people have only so much time and only so much money that they can spend on things. The fact that the museum is very, very busy and has been since we have opened, it's a testament to the team that has put this together, but also to the fact that the general public appreciates that something like this has value. It's not simple, it's not easy to digest. So given something that is this complex, the fact that people are responding to it well is very heartening, that we can actually take experiences to another level and people will still react to it well.
Right. So you have built the Museum of the Future. You're responsible for the tech stack of it. And you, I'm sure, have worked with some of the leading entrepreneurs, researchers, scientists in the field who, and possibly artists and writers, creatives, to build this kind of narrative. So there's so much of information you must have taken and understood about the future. So what's your view, your personal view on the future? Where do you see humanity or the world in the next possibly 30 to 50 years' time? And what are the tech stacks which is going to completely upend the society?
I am not a very good futurist. I cannot prognosticate a lot of prognosticate around some of the specifics of what you're asking about. Primarily because I think a lot of people have tried this. And when you think back to the tech stack that we use today, most of it is 10 years old. And even that, I don't think we would have envisioned as, having come about, like how this all became where we're going. I think there are amazing sci-fi authors who have done this. I always reference back to Arthur C. Clarke, who actually had one of the greatest visions of deployment, but I don't even know that he was a futurist. He was a sociologist, and people were able to go, that thing feels real enough that we can build it. In a way that he provided this 50-year forward vision by writing 2001: A Space Odyssey in the 60s, roughly at a 50-year span to go 2010, 2001, 40 to 50 years. And people were able to make a lot of those things. I mean, some of those things we still can't do. We still can't have space tourism, which we're all working on, but I would say the real stack is the human stack, which I know is kind of subverting your question here, but in many ways, what we have come to, even though it feels a little bit dystopian sometimes, is this capacity for humanity to really collaborate and come together. We saw this very, very effectively during the pandemic. And even if as much as social media gets disparaged, this system that we have of talking to each other to kind of bring ideas together is good. Like we have these tools that we have built in order to kind of collaborate and cross-pollinate and to essentially converge towards certain solutions. I think it's why we are accelerating certain things as quickly as we are, particularly in areas like machine learning, genetics, even construction. Some of these approaches are really, really remarkable. Perhaps the stack is really about, we bring that even further to kind of democratize it so that many more people can have access to these tools. And then we start seeing something really cool happening, which is tools can be built that are even easier for us to use and build on top of.
Now, the Museum of the Future is one of the places which kind of enables anyone who kind of walks in to leverage or understand the future. I mean, not from today, just, maybe possibly what's going to happen in the next 50 years. How do you think the Museum of the Future is helping, people perception around technology?
That's a good question. We have, I would say, we've taken two approaches. So the museum has exhibition spaces, which are part of our narrative of space, ecology, health. And we also have a floor called Tomorrow Today. And Tomorrow Today is our partnership floor, where we actually talk about all the, what I like to call shiny objects, which is like the cars of tomorrow, the exoskeleton suits, materials that might be coming, robotics, things like this. And I mean, obviously, there's a demographic that appreciates that. There's a demographic that appreciates each of the different topical areas that we've focused on. In a way, I think this floor, Tomorrow Today, is our attempt or our exhibition to allow people to see what's coming up in the very, very near future. The museum is set in a 50-year, speculative future, and the Tomorrow Today is very less speculative because you can see the prototypes there. You can actually give people a sense that this is the next step that they can get to. I think maybe this is a convenient way to bridge this path from today to a kind of fantastical future, although it's not truly fantastical. It's near fantastical. It's approachable, but it's still beyond your grasp. The Tomorrow Today is well within your grasp because you can see it, you can touch it, you can kind of see where people are going with this. And then that can get adapted to the next level or evolved on, or, it can be points of inspiration for building the next wave that is 40 years out, 50 years out,
You want to talk a little bit more about the shiny objects you mentioned?
In many ways, when we think about the future, I think we maybe end up being boxed in our vision based on media that we have seen recently. And I would say Hollywood movies obviously have given us a sense of what those stories are. And prior to that, science fiction that got widely deployed. I mean, the speculative fictional futures is not a new topical area. I think people have thought about the future for a very long time. the Industrial Revolution kind of changed how we thought about the future, to think about industry and the kind of the labor markets and the built objects as the way to think about the next generation of whatever the world would see, right? This is where you start seeing, okay, taller skyscrapers, cars that fly, humanoid solutions that do all of the menial work, you know. Prior to that, we only thought about it in terms of humanistic or materialistic things. Materialistic, not in the capitalist framework, but materialistic, like fabrics and things like this, like things that are actually tangible. So you move this a little bit into this other conversation of, you know, how people envision this. So I would say the shiny objects for us right now is this thing of what's very near to us. Okay, you're going to see the cars that are self-driving, cars that are electric. This is where people are working, and that's where the next prototypes are. Because it's very much in the mindset of what that consumer product is going to feel like. Then there's the stuff like exoskeletons, which we've talked about for a while, which are incredibly necessary for us to do a lot, but they haven't quite been deployed widely enough, you know, whether that's the wingsuit or the things that allow us to lift heavy objects, or, you know, whatever that is. There's another aspect that we actually have at the museum, which is materials speculative design, or materials prototype design, which is things like using seaweed, mushrooms, and other materials in order to solve some of our current problems. Like imagine seaweed-based or mushroom-based facades, you know? So building materials that are built out of these organic materials. It's a very helpful thing to have, and again, this is like because of our limitation of how much space we have and us having to select topics, we have to decide, okay, which ones do we focus on the most? But cool ideas are happening around the world. Like, what if instead of glass and steel, you had, you know, organic materials as the building material, you know? So that way you have buildings that breathe naturally, buildings that grow naturally, buildings that can expand and contract. It obviously creates a lot of questions about how we manage these kinds of environments, and also how we maintain them. But these are the kinds of things that we need to start thinking about. I would even say that, like, you know, a building like ours, which is a round building, people have thought about round buildings for a long time. We've had geodesic domes for 50 years now. But to deploy something like this has taken a certain amount of challenge. And now that it's done, people can start thinking, oh yeah, you know, we don't have to have rectilinear building. We can do things in a different way. So in a way, the shiny object is both the building and the things that are within it, and the speculative futures that we have put out to people, so that they can now, you know, take each of those steps.
You have paved the path of bringing it into the public's perception and making everybody experience it, and possibly maybe also saying that, okay, this is what's coming in. Possibly, you know, the rest of the technologist, the government kind of joins in. How is this learning of you know, putting together the future being leveraged by UAE and Dubai?
I think Dubai is, it's already here. It's like, I don't think there's a place that does it better on some level. And that's obviously me being very, very biased because I'm here. But Dubai exists, and its existence is proof of this thing, and people pay attention to it and do something else, you know? In many ways, I would say global trends of how to take that next wave, we're seeing articles come out about the multi-billion-dollar projects that are in the desert in the US, you know. We obviously have all seen the ads for things that are happening in Saudi Arabia. These kinds of things are progressions, and I think there are a lot of dismissive approaches of people going, oh yeah, you know, they just threw a bunch of money at this thing, or like somebody else is throwing a bunch of money to create cities. I mean, the same kind of criticism was levied against China when entire cities were built with arguable success. But on some level, you have to take that leap, right? You have to go, okay, we're going to build something and see where this goes. It has been very successful for the UAE. I think the vision here is tremendous. It's complicated because there's certain factors that allow things to happen, and there are other things that make things complicated or challenging to execute that vision. But at the end of the day, I think Dubai proves that these things are possible. It doesn't have to be because of the Museum of the Future. The Museum of the Future is part of a very long timeline. It just happens to be, but a lot of other things have also happened. There's the Burj Khalifa, there's the Burj Al Arab, there's the greening, there's the, you go through this and it's like Dubai sent out a Mars probe. It's like each of these things is just in this kind of very broad timeline. And the museum, in my vision, is one of those things that comes up in this timeline. And it's kind of amazing that like you go, okay, somebody has a 50-year vision or a 100-year vision, and they're building, and it's like it's going to happen, So I'll add one more point to this, which for me is very heartening about the state of technology, to kind of go to your question about the stack. We've talked about things like smart buildings for a long time, but I think the tools to build these kinds of solutions are being thought through as we go. Parametric design allowed us to do certain things. Each layer of it requires a set of tools. Like doing it by hand or doing it through calculations on paper is very, very complicated. So you almost have to set up the tooling in order to do that next wave of whatever it is. So in a way, I think the credit for all of this goes to the engineers who are doing this, who are responding to the creative vision of someone who's going, okay, we can do this, which relies also on somebody having the vision to go, I'm going to pay for this to get this thing done. And somebody else who goes, I'm going to like take this to this end trajectory, And a lot of that exists here, which is kind of remarkable. So I'd say, in a stack, that's where the human stack really comes in. All of these things are piling up together to get to an end result.
Right. So what I take from here, Sundar, is that the desire and then intent and the long drawn out work. You said these are small things, which has been done through the years, and everything is playing up and has made Dubai the nation which it is at this point in time. I think globally, every nation is looking at what Dubai UAE is doing, and here in India, we've got a reverse migration of sorts, sadly, because of the government's approach. The Web 3.0 startups, the metaverse startups are looking at moving to Dubai. So I think as a nation state and people who are listening, I think we are facing this huge opportunity as well as a challenge, and the challenge we can overcome is A, when we collaborate, B, when we leverage the technology and human potential, and when all of these things kind of come together with the desire and intent, you have a great future ahead. What's coming next for Museum of the Future?
I think it's actually remarkable how successful it has been and how stable it is, how the experiences have really like been accepted by the general public, as I said before. I think we have a bunch of things that we're thinking about for our, what are we releasing next? We try to keep that a little bit close to heart so that we can both have a nice reveal, and also because we want the narrative to kind of continue. We don't plan on like forklift upgrading anything. Our story is still our story. And it's actually, I would say like this is one of the things that people should keep in mind. The cultural places have a purpose in terms of telling the story. That story you can adapt the story in specific contexts. Like for example, we tell the story of space, we can change that around to tell a different aspect of the story of space. But we're not going to change that from telling the story of space to telling the story of deep sea. It's like it's too much of a lift, but also because we have a story that we're telling. So for us, it's really about how can we maintain some of the narrative arc and make people understand that they can kind of tie into specific things for themselves so that we can inspire them to do the next thing.
How do we get towards, building a collective future which is beneficial for everyone?
But I think where we need to go as humanity is to also make a lot of these tools digestible. Once you know how to make a knife, you start understanding what that technology is, and you can start leveraging it in whatever way you want, hopefully largely for benefit. The distance between the current deployment of the tools and the mechanisms to create the tools is growing exponentially. This is the part that is scariest for me. It's not about the actual end product. It is that you can't fix your car anymore. You can't be an auto mechanic without having a pretty significant stack of tools, which starts with a laptop, which then gets into proprietary firmware, which then needs to get training. And then you have to know where these interfaces are, and then read these interfaces and know the protocols. And so it is pretty far from being able to go, cars run because of fire, oxygen, and fuel, and I know how that works because I can create fire without anything else. I can find fuel out in nature, and I can figure out how to do oxygen. I just have to blow on it. You can't do let me rub a stick and do this thing and figure out how something will run off of this. Like, just create a steam engine. So I think what our biggest threat is right now is this: how do we get people to learn fast enough to ensure that it is not a very small cabal that understands how these technologies work, that are then widely disseminated and affect everything that we do. I don't think it's insurmountable, but it's complicated. I am not going to say, oh, I have a solution for this. I don't even know where we start for that. But I think the next generation, this is what they need to think about. And that's what I always think. Okay, how do children today have to think in order to go, how do we learn all of this stuff quickly enough and use those tools quickly enough to get to this democratization, if you will, of production of these kinds of tools?
We need more museums such as this, which showcases what the future can look like if we all join together and work towards a brighter place. And I hope that in that little museum of the future, I hope that there's this little small space also where you can show a glimpse of what the world would look like if we take the wrong step. So just that people are aware. So, but thank you. Really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see and hear, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.